So the other day, Jules was doing a question and answer live where she was answering questions from her listeners. And of course, she steered them wrong on several things. So I wanted to discuss some of the more egregious ones and correct that misinformation. So, first of all, let's get started with this about the civil suit.
I recorded some of the documents today that we need to catch up on for the WSU stuff. And I mean, honestly, like I really just hope, and I've said this 1,000 times, y'all are probably so tired of hearing it, but this is my sentiment on it. And even now, like, I don't want it to move to Fed court.
So the case has already been removed to federal court. And I heard you again yesterday claim that this was still about arguments for moving it from state to federal court, but that is not correct. It's in federal court now. WSU had it removed from the state courts in Skagit, and it is in the Western District of Washington right now, which is federal. And the arguments are about whether to move it to the Eastern District of Washington. But just in case you don't believe me, let's take a look at this document. So this was the document dated January 27th, 2026, with the notice of removal to federal court. So WSU had requested that it be moved to federal court, and the judge granted that. So here's where we're at now. Now we have the defendant's motion to transfer venue. So they are wanting to transfer it from the Western District of Washington to the Eastern District. And if you'll read this document, it states, this is a civil rights and wrongful death action arising from the murder of 4 University of Idaho students in their Idaho residence against Washington State University. Initially filed in Skagit County, Washington, and removed by WSU to the Western District of Washington, WSU now seeks to transfer the venue of this case from the Western District of Washington to the Eastern District of Washington. And this was dated February 3rd, 2026, and this is when they assigned a new judge, the federal judge, and you'll notice it says United States District Court, Western District of Washington, Office of the Clerk. United States District Court is federal. So it says the above entitled action was removed to the United States District Court from the Superior District Court on January 27th, 2026. This case has been assigned to the Honorable Kimberly K. Evanson. So again, it was already removed from the state court and moved to federal court. And the defendants, WSU, filed for it to be moved to the Eastern District of Washington, federal court. And the plaintiffs are wanting it to stay in the Western District of Washington, still federal court. So let's move on. This is when you tried to make fun of Amy Santaro, who's a PhD, who has been a CSI, because you didn't understand or follow the whole discussion thread. Let's take a listen.
Like even from people with like MD behind their name are out of their mind. Like literally out of their freaking mind. Like this one, I don't even remember this woman's name, but she's a doctor, some sort of doctor, and somebody wanted her to go in and talk about Xana's injuries on her left hand, about how severed her hand was, where they said like her finger was almost cut off. Like we ended up reading through what the injury was, but she, for some reason, thought that the person was talking about Maddie. And she's like going on about how Maddie's hands are fine and these markings are all normal and there's no injury like that. And this is totally fine. And I'm like, where did this person even say Maddie's name? The comment is on the screen and doesn't say anything about who the person's talking about. It just talks about the injury. And if you've followed the case the way this person is claiming that they followed the case, you know that would be Xana. So she went off telling this person basically how wrong they were about there even being injuries, just for her to be the one that was mistaken on who she was supposed to be talking about.
Okay, and you would be wrong because Amy was actually responding to a person who was specifically talking about Maddie. Because when you look at Maddie's fingerprints, they look weird and people thought that Maddie's fingers were all shredded or that they were missing the tips. That had been going around TikTok, and Amy had explained why it looks that way. But I'm going to show you the comment thread since you obviously jumped to conclusions instead of reading it first.
Why did they take the fingerprints, palm prints, and footprints of the Idaho 4 victims? I'm a forensic scientist and a former CSI. I've seen lots of questions. I'm going to be answering them all, but let me address this one first. By now, I'm sure you've seen the scanned images of the Idaho 4 victims' palm prints, fingerprints, and footprints.
Okay, so that was the video that started this comment thread, and she was showing Maddie's fingerprints. And if you see this person, Allie, they said, but Maddie didn't have defensive wounds, and they put it in quotes with question marks, because they were basically being sarcastic about the fact that law enforcement had said she didn't have defensive wounds, which is true. And then that same Allie person then put that comment that you're referring to. I'm not an expert, but I have taken forensics classes and have experience with taking fingerprints. The ones I've done don't have weird points on the tips. Again, talking about Maddie's. None have ever looked like that. Then please do further explaining on what you're talking about where's the rest of her finger. So then another person says, reflex, even if you're asleep, your body will react and attempt to protect itself, creating defensive wounds. And that Allie person again says, but to that extent, I've moved and used my hands in my sleep or right before waking up. It's not that much force. A reflex isn't strong or forceful. Her fingertips are missing. There had to be force behind it. Again, she's talking about Maddie. So then Amy answers her back and says her fingertips are not missing, and that Allie person then puts an asterisk and says shredded, to which Amy replies no, and then Amy makes the video that you're referring to, but nowhere in this conversation was anyone talking about Xana. This was all about Maddie's fingerprints because this person thought Maddie's fingers were shredded. And Amy did do a separate video also on Xana, but here's that video you were referring to.
What happened to Maddie Mogen's fingers? I'm a forensic scientist and a former CSI, and I've gotten a couple comments on recent videos talking about how Maddie Mogen's fingertips were cut off, how her fingers were shredded, how her fingerprints don't look right. So let me explain what's going on.
So as you can see, she was talking about Maddie because the comment thread was about Maddie. Now, let's move on because you seem to have a confusion about the chain of custody and why it would have an Idaho State Police Lab sticker on there as well. So let's watch this segment.
If you look at the bottom, it's all the exact same handwriting for each person. We have seen Detective Talbot, 11/13/22. Detective Talbot, Detective Payne, 11/14. Detective Payne, MPD something, I don't know, 11/14. Evidence, and then I don't know what this says. I have no clue. And that was on 11/16. Officer something. And then Corporal somebody, and then whoever this is on 11/16. And this would be the same person again. And then this would be the last destination on 11/16. So this would be the evidence lab and the ISP officer, the trooper, coming and picking it up and taking it to Meridian. And then the officer at Meridian had to take it like another 4 hours or so over to the actual ISP lab where it landed. So on all these different dates, why are they all the exact same handwriting? Why does this look like it was all written at the exact same time? So how am I supposed to believe this chain of custody when it's written by the same person? It looks like it was literally done. Yes, fake as shit. It looks like it was literally done just to appease my freaking FOIA request. And then it says subject unknown, offense date 11/13. There's the case number. Like, look at this thing. This is the only part that looks legitimate from 12/16/2022 when they put this sticker on there. But Idaho State Police, what? Why do we even have this label? Where's the MPD label? Because this was with the Moscow Police Department for 3 days. From the 13th to the 16th, it sat with MPD, and then it got transferred to ISP. So why is it just an ISP label?
Yes, because ISP forensics team is who collected the evidence. They are who processed the scene. So they're using their label on there. And this is in Payne's report. The ISP team turned these items over to me that evening, and I transported them to the MPD temporary evidence storage. On the morning of 11/14/2022, I booked the items into MPD evidence with the help of evidence custodian, and we now know that that is Small Ridge. But it's documented that it was the ISP forensics team, Darren Gilbertson was the sergeant, led by him, that collected this evidence. Moscow Police Department did not collect the evidence. It was just being put in the Moscow Police Department evidence hold until it could be transported to the ISP lab in Meridian. So far everything's matching up on that sticker. You had Talbot to Payne, and then Payne to the evidence temporary, and then the temporary evidence hold from Payne, or to Payne, and then Payne to the main evidence hold. And then you have Chad Willerford, who did his report that says on November 16th, 2022, at approximately 6:36 hours, I, Corporal Williford of the Idaho State Police, assisted Moscow Police Department by transporting evidence related to an active investigation to the State Forensics Laboratory. So he talks about how he signed for and received one item from Cassie Macy of the Moscow Police Department. I contacted Corporal Turrentine and informed him of the assignment and asked for his assistance. I transported the evidence south and met Corporal Turrentine at the Idaho Transportation Department shed in New Meadows. I maintained custody of the evidence from when I received it until I released it to the custody of Corporal Turrentine. I was subsequently informed that the evidence had been successfully transported to the lab. No further action was taken. So he transported it halfway to Meridian, which is near Boise. So New Meadows, and then from New Meadows, it was transported the rest of the way, and that all matches up with this sticker. So here's that sticker again. You had from the scene to Talbot, was at the scene, and then Talbot transferred it to Payne, and then Payne transferred it to Moscow Police Department evidence, and then Moscow Police Department evidence transferred it to Williford, and then Williford transferred it to Turrentine, and then Turrentine transferred it to the lab in Meridian. So that is all correctly documented. You're getting out there in the weeds with it being all in the same handwriting and it being an ISP label. It was an ISP label because they were the ones in charge of the forensic evidence in that house. It was their ISP forensics team that collected everything and made sure it got transported to the lab. It was only in the MPD evidence for those 2 days as they needed a place to keep it stored safely until it could be brought to Meridian. So now let's move on. Jules is still talking about the sheath, but this time she's under the wrong impression that the swab was redone because the report says resubmission. Let's take a listen.
But there's no paper trail for the resubmitted swab. And I have a problem with that because that's the only part that says Koberger is this resubmitted swab with no paper trail. Yeah, but I want to know why did they throw it away and re-swab it and basically label it like they labeled the first one? If it was technically a resubmission, it shouldn't have been. And now that we have the forensics, we're seeing that the swab where the sample came from is a resubmitted sample, a resubmitted swab. So we're missing a lot of paperwork.
No, they didn't throw away the swab and redo it and resubmit it. The sheath was only swabbed that one time. The different locations on it swabbed that one time. And there is a paper trail in the forensics documents. We're going to take a look at it. So we're going to start with the form, the submission receipt you're talking about. And this is the first page of it. And it's dated 11/18/2022. So we're going to go here to the next page that shows where it has the resubmission box checked. And they submitted this into the lab with all of these other items that came in submission too. But if you notice this, it says item number 1.1. Now that is the swab of a particular section on the sheath. Now, the sheath originally came in as item 1, because the whole sheath was item 1, and that came in on November 16th, 2022, and this is the chain of custody report, and you'll see where it was put into evidence storage in Meridian. And then you'll see on 11/17 that the lab staff took it out from the evidence storage, and it went to Tina Whitehall. And then it was brought back into evidence storage on the 19th. So let's take a look. Now here is what they did on November 17th. They swabbed the sheath. And I'm only showing you the picture that has when they created item 1.1, which was that swab up around that strap, that snap area. And then 1.2, of course, which was down to the blade, but not the other parts. But item 1 is the sheath. Item 1.1 is the swab from that strap area. And that was done on November 17th. And then here is the biology analysis notes for swabbing the sheath. So you'll see November 17th, and it talks about how it was in a brown paper bag. That was item 1, K-bar knife sheath. And then you'll start seeing 1.1, 1.3. These are the different swabs, and I highlighted the date. So now we have a chain of custody report just for the swabs, because the first one we looked at was for the sheath, item 1. So now, if you notice, item 1.1 goes back to evidence storage on the 17th after they did the swab. But on the 18th, they took it back out again so it could be analyzed by Shannon Arundo. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then she returned it back to the freezer section on November 18th. And that is where you're getting the resubmission box checked, because she was resubmitting it back to the lab, to the general storage, to the freezer section, after she had done further analysis on it for the DNA, after the initial swabbing had been done. So it was not a resubmission, as in they threw away the sample and redid the sample. It was just that 1.1 was sent for further DNA analysis, because remember, they also ran that through CODIS and everything. They had to do the STR sample, the STR profile. So it was submitted back to the evidence freezer on November 18th. It was resubmitted to the evidence freezer. But let's move on. This is where you saw a JLR video, apparently, and wrongly thought that there were 50 police cars surrounding Sigma Chi. Let's watch.
What I really want is when they went to the frat house and it was completely covered and surrounded by like 50 different freaking cop cars. And I want to know what happened there. I want to know what the hell that was all about, because that was caught on camera. That was on camera.
So let's watch JLR's video. Now, he says 9 Idaho State trooper vehicles parked by Sigma Chi, but yeah, they weren't really parked by Sigma Chi. Okay, as you can see, he's driving by the Banfield on Taylor Avenue, and he's going to get down to the intersection of Taylor and Blake, and he's looking across over from the Banfield over to New Greek Row. And you'll see this hall he's driving by right there to the left. That hall is Targhee Hall. It's an old dormitory. So he turns left on to Blake, and you'll see Idaho State Police vehicles. Oh, but look where they're parked. They're all parked here on Blake, right outside Targhee Hall, which is on the corner of the Banfield. Okay? They are on Blake. They are not near Sigma Chi. So he keeps going down Blake, keeps going down Blake, keeps going down Blake, and he's going to turn up here on Nez Perce. So he turns on to Nez Perce, and now we're heading to New Greek Row. So we've got some of the houses coming up here. You're going to see the Alpha Kappa Lambda house. And then the AGD house is going to be, that sorority house is going to be next to Alpha Kappa Lambda. And then you're going to have Sigma Chi coming up after the Alpha Gamma Delta house. And I'll give you this. There was one ISP vehicle parked outside of Sigma Chi, but there wasn't 50. And those 9 that he saw were not outside of Sigma Chi. Here's a little map to show you Sigma Chi in relation to Targhee Hall, which is where those ISP vehicles were at. The reason why those were there was the Idaho State Patrol was being housed at Targhee Hall while they were there investigating, because that's an old dormitory and it's empty and they use it for different housing needs when it arises. They were housing them at Targhee Hall, which is why their vehicles were parked outside. So no, Sigma Chi was not being swarmed by Idaho State Police vehicles. Never happened. I remember when JLR posted that, and he was being overly dramatic like he always is, but lots of people took that and ran with it. And I was sitting there going, people, look, they're at Targhee. They're not at Sigma Chi. They're staying in the dorm. But let's move on. Now you're saying that the FBI took responsibility for the 2 traffic stops in Indiana? No, they never did. Okay. It was anonymous source that skeezy book author decided to cite. Let's take a listen.
So if you're going to believe the stories that we originally heard when it came to the traffic stops because of how close they were, then you have to remember that the FBI not only took responsibility for those at first when we first heard about them, but then there was a rumor that came out saying that they'd actually lost track of Kohberger at some point while he was traveling. And so then all of a sudden the FBI took responsibility, all of the, hey, we were responsible for that stuff, got pulled away.
They literally never took responsibility. It was an anonymous source, and an FBI spokesperson denied the shocking account, calling it false information, what is not helpful to the case against inmate 163214 or to the American public. The FBI is aware of reports detailing alleged FBI surveillance on Idaho murder subject, the spokesman said in a statement. There are anonymous sources providing false information to the media. The FBI has denied claims that its agents lost accused mass killer, inmate 163214, while he was under surveillance for the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students. Surveillance teams had been tasked with keeping eyes on him after he became a person of interest. But law enforcement sources told Airmails, oh, well, you know who Airmail is. Yeah, that's everybody's favorite stupid author, The Eyes of a Killer Part 2, that in the early hours of December 13th, inmate 163214 set off on a cross-country drive with his father from Washington State University to his family home in Pennsylvania, and the surveillance team lost him. The sources admitted that he managed to slip the net almost as soon as his white Hyundai pulled out of the parking lot at his graduate housing complex. Yeah, you really want me to believe that he slipped their net driving around Pullman, Washington, onto the freaking highway down to Lewiston, Clarkston, and then on down to the interstate? Yeah, no. For the next several alarming hours or more, the man believed to have brutally stabbed the 4 students to death had seemingly vanished, the outlet reported. Investigators desperately scoured automated license plate readers in nearby states to try and find any signs as to his car driving through. Hours later, the car finally pinged in Loma, Colorado, about 900 miles away in a 15-hour drive from Pullman, and the surveillance operation resumed. Well, they were querying those after they got his name. So after the FBI had gave Moscow police his name, then they were checking license plate readers after the fact to see what route he had traveled. And then it says 2 December traffic stops by Indiana police of the man later charged with murdering 4 University of Idaho students were unrelated to any active surveillance or the search for a car similar to the one the suspect drove, according to state and federal law enforcement agencies. The heavily scrutinized stops a month after the November slayings were instead routine interstate drug trafficking prevention operations by 2 different Indiana police departments. Law enforcement officials in the state told the Idaho Statesman. Yep, because he got pulled over once by Indiana State Patrol and once by the Sheriff's Department. So 2 completely different agencies. And it talks about this on the rest of this article. And that is not an uncommon corridor for them to do those drug trafficking stops. When they see out-of-state plates, they're going to pull you over. And in this case, they use the excuse of him following too closely. So even inmate 163214's own Pennsylvania attorney believed that those back-to-back police stops were a random coincidence. And then it goes on to say, but a mix of news reports that cited anonymous sources and speculation on social media have persisted in alleging the FBI was telling him. The FBI has maintained its agents were not involved in the stop, including this week in response to questions about the incidents from the Statesman. Sandra Barker, a Salt Lake City-based FBI spokesperson, pointed to the past statements from the agency to underscore denials that it played any part in them. Contrary to reports, the December 15th traffic stops conducted on the vehicle in Indiana were not requested or directed by the FBI, the FBI's Indianapolis office said in January. And of course, we all know airmail, who the author is, Howard Bloom, that loves pulling stuff out of his rear, saying that they're from anonymous sources. And by the way, how are anonymous people working out for you? Did you FOIA that Taco Bell receipt yet that you claimed Eric Gower should have had? Well, remember when I said that wasn't really Eric Gower that talked to News Nation and Law and Crime, like Anjanette Levy and all them, that was an imposter? The one that claimed they went to Taco Bell after dropping the girls off? Yeah. Ashley Banfield finally admitted it the other night that they had been duped. That was not really Eric Gower they talked to. Shocker, I know. But let's continue where you listen to your viewers' unfounded rumors about Dylan's boyfriend.
Also, the police body cam of who looks exactly like her boyfriend Quinn entering the back slider door with her waiting for him and closing the door behind him, and he denies ever being in Moscow. Why? I do remember people saying that, but I don't think I've ever seen that. Because I know people were questioning, like, how has she been there and you've never seen her? But there was photos of, I believe, her in front of his big truck in the area.
Okay, first of all, Quinn does not drive a big black truck. Dylan was not posing in front of his vehicle. This was Quinn's vehicle, not a big black truck. He also is correct in that he had never been to Moscow. He was going to school at Boise State University. She would see him when she'd go home on the breaks. Now, this is the body cam in question. Your listeners are claiming that the person seen going in the patio door was Quinn. All because of this photo. Now, the reason why they think this is because Dylan was wearing the same dress in this photo as she was wearing on the day that the noise complaint happened. But they were sitting inside of Dylan's vehicle in this picture, and it was not in Moscow. And also, Quinn's not even wearing the same outfit as the person that's going in the sliding door. That person was wearing all black. Okay, black shorts, black shirt. But let's take a look at the picture taken that day. This was the picture taken the day of the noise complaint. If we zoom in on Dylan's hair, she has braids in the front. If we look at the picture of her in the vehicle with Quinn, no braids. You know, it's almost as if people that have clothing wear the same item of clothing more than once and on different days and in different cities. And if people still think that he was there that day of the noise complaint, let's look at the cars parked along here. Let's look at all of them parked along the road leading up to 1122 King. You don't see a vehicle that looks like Quinn's parked anywhere. So did he just levitate Now, I know a lot of people thought this black truck there was his, but that's not even the same one Dylan was pictured in front of. And again, Quinn didn't have a black truck, but none of these vehicles are Quinn's. So can we put that one to bed finally? Next, let's talk about that TikTok video, because everybody seems to think that that one from Halloween was somehow bullying, and it wasn't.
Theories that I can't exclude due to her possible involvement is a cleanup is that she was upset about Maddie's last TikTok making her look horrible, cried to Quinn about it, and he brought some friends to get even. Are you talking about the one with the blue hair? That one's been going around a lot on TikTok too here recently. I guess it's being brought back up because of the messages, like the phone activity. That is the only way I can make sense of Dylan cleaning up after the crimes. Who else would she clean up for? And that video was pretty bad when you take into account that she was a freshman trying to fit in and it looked like she was being picked on. The audio was also bad. Yeah, I remember that TikTok. I've seen it recently. It's literally going around right now for some reason. I know people say it was a viral audio clip, but would you use that in a video of someone you liked and were friends with? No.
Couple things there. There was no cleanup. Yes, I know Turvey was trying to say that there was a cleanup. Also, Turvey was likely going to be precluded from testifying because he has credibility issues. He's been precluded from several cases, but we can do a whole other video on that if you like. But that whole video was a joke. It was viral audio. Dylan had filmed it with Maddie, and there was the backstory behind her costume, which we're going to play that as well, with her talking about the backstory with her and Ethan on that. But first, let's watch the TikTok.
You fucking asshole! You fucking liar! You fucking manipulator!
Don't wear that outfit again.
And here was Dylan actually commenting on the video. She's like, absolutely not. And their friend Avery was, LMAO laughing my ass off. And now let's listen to Dylan talking about the whole situation with her costume.
One night, it was Halloween, and me and my friend were doing thing 1, thing 2. My costume had broken, so I was kind of drunk and pissed off. Not at anyone, just myself. So Ethan had given me clothes because we were at. And I was pissed off, and Ethan kept calling me thing 42, and I was like, no, I'm thing 2, not thing 42, because it was like a joke. And I have like videos of like me messing around with him, and he's just like making fun of me because I was wearing like his brother's clothes, blue hair, sunglasses. It was just like that kind of stuff. And he was just like I'm very I like to be sarcastic a lot, like as a joke, and he liked to do that as well. So we would like just be giving sarcastic jokes back to each other.
So that was talking about the precursor to that TikTok, and there was other videos with her and Ethan goofing off too. But you can see where she's walking in at the end of that TikTok with the clothing that Hunter had given her to wear. So it was all a joke. It was viral sound. They filmed it together. It was not bullying. It was not harassment. She was not a freshman trying to fit in. Okay. Now let's move on to Jules trying to say that Dylan refused to sit down with a sketch artist. That's not exactly how that went down.
But when it comes to Dylan and Bethany, look, I'm telling you now, there is no way that anyone is going to make me believe that they don't know more information. To me, you want to know the reason why I think that Dylan wouldn't do a composite? Because she knew that she was going to describe somebody that people would recognize. Why else would you not? You're sitting here doing all these interviews. You have no problem doing the actual interviews. But when it comes to you actually having to describe the person that you're claiming to have seen, you're refusing. And again, if she saw eyebrows, if she saw the structure, if she saw whatever, why would you refuse to do a composite sketch? Again, because you're going to end up describing somebody that can be easily recognized, that the people around you are going to recognize. Is that why? It's a good way to lie without lying, just to not answer.
Okay, she didn't refuse. Okay. She didn't see how it would be helpful, but they could have told her she had to sit down with a sketch artist. She never sat there and said, I refuse, I won't do it. Because She didn't see structure. She only saw like eyes, eyebrows, okay? The guy's face, the rest of the face was covered. So how exactly are you going to have a sketch artist do anything that is useful when you only saw like here? And that's it. Please explain. But let's listen to that portion of her interview.
I don't know how I knew it was someone, because from my mind, it's like I was once wearing these like blurry glasses. Like it's so fuzzy and cloudy, but it was like a figure of someone wearing all black, and it was like they had the ski mask that was covering their forehead and their chin and mouth. But I could see that all I remember was seeing their eyebrows. And I don't remember what their eyes looked like, but I remember their eyebrows. I don't remember the color of the eyebrows were. I just remember like bushy eyebrows. That's all I could think about. But like after everything that's happened, like I think he was there, but it's like how much do I actually know is real? How much do I think is like made up in my mind?
Do you think you can remember enough of him to give a composite for a composite artist?
No.
Not enough.
No, I don't remember what his eyes look like. I don't remember what his nose looked like. I just remember eyebrows. I don't know exactly what his eyebrows look like at all, really. I just remember thinking like eyebrows. So like I couldn't even like.
Earlier you said because they were bushy.
Yeah, bushy, but that's all. Like I don't remember the shape. I don't remember like the color. I just remember like bushy eyebrows. That's the only thing I can remember.
And when you.
So Detective Gooch asked her if she thought she could remember enough, and she said no. Okay, she didn't refuse. Nowhere in there did she say, no, I'm not going to sit down with a sketch artist. So trying to shade it that way, well, but that's what you always do. You try to shade everything to make Dylan and Bethany look guilty. It's really quite ridiculous at this stage, but they could have told her to sit down with a sketch artist and she would have done it had they pushed the issue. But again, what useful are you going to get out of a sketch when the face was mostly covered?
I don't know. I mean, one day, hopefully, yeah, the truth usually always finds its way to come out. Like, it's really, really difficult for somebody to keep a lie forever. Has it happened? Yeah. It sure has. I really hope that's not the case here. Eventually, something's going to have to crack.
Well, here's what I have to say to that. Written factual basis. He admitted guilt to all charges. And since we've had plea deals in this country, there has been no adult that has pled guilty to a quadruple homicide that has later been found innocent. You just don't plead guilty to quadruple homicides. There was one juvenile, and that was because they denied that person counsel, denied them their parents. This man is an adult. He had competent counsel. And they still went and asked the prosecution for a plea deal. An innocent person does not do that. He also let the first appeal deadline pass without filing an appeal. If he was innocent, would he really be doing those things? No. So you're going to have to resign yourself to the fact that he did it. He's guilty. And Dylan and Bethany, your little pipe dream of them being guilty is not ever going to come true because they had nothing to do with these crimes. They don't know anymore, and nobody's going to crack. Okay? Because the only person responsible is sitting in the Idaho State Penitentiary right now. Okay, there was a lot more I could have gone on about from that live. More misinformation, more misleading things, more things to show factual evidence on. But I had to edit for time because I'm still working on my Desperate Conspira Wives video, and that next installment is going to be on Midwest Chicken Shore. So look for that to be coming out this week. It's been taking me longer than I thought because I had life in between. Real life gets in the way of doing these videos. But look for that this week, and if there's anybody else you would like me to do a video on, let me know.